The 90s are back, baby. It's time for the soft focus. In case you couldn't tell, there were a lot of guitars in there, and I don't want to burn through a whole bunch of time replaying something you just heard, but I do want to make sure you heard this isolated version of that palm muted part. I also want to make sure you hear this rhythmic part that was pushed kind of into the background. Believe it or not, this is a pretty simple reverb pedal, but there is a trick to getting it to sound right for what you need. So I'm going to start with everything down except for the volume, and then bring in the mix, and then bring in the verb. So mix controls the overall mix, and there's always a little bit of reverb in the wet signal. And then the verb knob just adjusts the decay time so it lingers longer. And you may have noticed that I didn't put the mix knob past around 3 o'clock, and there's a reason for that. We'll come back to that in a second. First, let's check out the Mod and the Symphony knobs. Mod adds a little bit of a chorus swirl to the reverb effect, as well as adding in some higher frequencies, and Symphony over here gives us an octave up in the mix. Now that we've got this wonderfully shimmery, swirly, Tears for Fears-esque thing going on, let's take that mix knob up all the way. 3 o'clock on the mix knob is right around where the dry signal starts to come out of the mix. So we can use this like a flavored reverb or as a full-on airy synth kind of thing. That's something that I really like about this pedal. It's got a lot of uses beyond just going full tilt, and that's why I titled the video the way that I did. But let's back up a little bit and talk about reverb as a concept. Most delays use this idea of a single delay line, and delay line is actually a great term because it really flattens things down to a line. Things go in here, they come out the other end, and some of it goes back into the front of the delay line to be delayed again. That's delay. That's a simple delay line type delay effect. What we hear in the real world isn't just the distance between here and here in a straight line. If this is a wall, it's the distance between here and here, and here and here, and here and here, and here and here, but also here and here and here, back to here and here and here, and you get the idea. Reverb is just delay diffused. What we actually end up hearing in the real world, though, like in a church or gymnasium or an empty concert hall, is kind of waves of reverberations coming back to us focused around certain times. So we split the difference and call it echo. And the Boss RV3 that I was using there has these fantastic reverb plus delay modes in the middle. It would be a crime not to demo them as long as I have it out. Way back before effects were a thing, the way reverb got added to a recording was by recording in a space. It could be a literal reverb chamber or a treated studio space or even a church or a bathroom. Throw a microphone down a hallway. It's how it was done because that's how it had to be done. And we often think about plate reverb as being one of the OG forms of reverb, along with hall, room, chamber. But plate was actually invented as a more practical alternative to the real thing. The plate in plate reverb refers to a big metal plate suspended in a typically wooden enclosure with a transducer sending tiny little vibrations throughout that plate, which get picked up by pickups, typically around the edges of it. And it's obviously not the same as miking up a hall or a treated studio, but you get all that diffusion and reflection and dissipation, and like a lot of attempts at reproducing something else, it became its own thing. And these were great for studios because you could park a whole bunch of these down in a basement in a fraction of the space that you would use for a practical reverb chamber. One of these summers, I really want to build myself a plate reverb unit. Maybe I'll put it out in the garage or something. Until then, I've got more than enough pedals, rack units, and plugins that do a pretty good job. But back in the early 90s, everyone's favorite maker of jet skis, motorcycles, outboard motors, golf clubs, network gear, pianos, robotic arms, guitars, tennis rackets, and hydrogen leak detectors, Yamaha released the FX-500 Simul Effect processor. And the deal with this was to take the effects that it had, compression, distortion, EQ, modulation, and reverb, and combine them as many ways into as many programs as possible. And I watched a couple of YouTube videos and briefly considered buying one of my own. And like a lot of 90s digital units, you wind up hearing a lot of over-the-top and very dated stuff, but occasionally you land on a gem. And program number 40, called Soft Focus, combined reverb with delay and chorus. The actual soft focus patch had a built-in delay along with the chorus and the reverb effect. The soft focus pedal, while it improves on the preamp and the bypass and the overall signal quality, they apparently ran out of memory for a delay, so it's BYOD. But even without a delay, it's still a pretty tasty, ethereal, spacey effect. I really like this pedal, and it's not at all what I was expecting. I thought it would be a one-trick pony shoegaze machine, and it can do all that stuff, but just pulling down the mix turns it into a very practical, flavored reverb machine. And if you dig this the way that I dig it, I've got a link to the Catalinbread Soft Focus at zounds.com. You can check out the soft focus and anything else Catalinbread makes that catches your eye. If you've watched this channel before, you know that I'm typically not a reverb pedal kind of guy, but this one really has grown on me, and I like this. I wish it had some sort of tone shaping tools, maybe an adjustment for the modulation rate. Might as well include the delay and make it stereo at that point too, but this still rocks. I'll catch you on the next one.